Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today at your worship service. I'm always very pleased to be in the company of folks that, thank you, Sarah. Be in the company of folks that gather to exchange fellowship and friendship and seek the truth. So again, thank you for having me. I'm not sure if she's here today or not, but I'd like to thank Dr. Patricia Callahan for having invited me after I spoke at SVSU. So many thanks to her. Also to Sarah Nuss Warren for graciously helping me through all of the logistics of being here with you today. And I'd also like to thank my wife, Magali, for many things, but particularly for being with me here today. And ordinarily I wouldn't mention it, but Magali is originally from Ecuador, and I lived there for several years myself. And so when it was mentioned in your announcements about all those fabulous sea turtles being released back into the Galapagos, that's something near and dear to us, and it was just very nice news to hear. A little bit about me. Oh, sorry, I'm terrible at that. Is that better? Okay. See, I never would have made it in a band. You got to be so close to that microphone. There we go. See, you got to kind of kiss the thing. It's terrible. So just a bit about me. I'm an immigration lawyer. My name's Mike Woolley. I'm a partner in the law firm. Its name is Varnum. It's out of Grand Rapids, but we have law offices throughout the state, and they're very generous to give me a remote office in Bay City, even though I travel to Grand Rapids and our other offices frequently. I started practicing immigration law about 1995, so about 30 years of pretty much full-time immigration law. My practice, I have a specialty in healthcare immigration. I spend a lot of time helping healthcare facilities put physicians and other healthcare workers in rural areas or urban areas that are underserved with disadvantaged populations. It's something I'm very passionate about. I also do a lot of higher education work, which is very fulfilling, and I also do general business immigration, which I have clients that are in agriculture, industry, manufacturing, IT, those sorts of things. But my emphasis is in healthcare and higher ed. I'd like to speak to you today a bit about immigration law at the present time. It's a very volatile topic, of course, and there's deep-felt emotions on both sides of the issue. But what I'd like to do is, if we may, take whatever emotion we may have about it and just set it to the side for the time being, because what I've noticed in my many years of practicing immigration law is that when I listen to news reports or I speak to people just in passing, that many folks, very understandably, don't really have an understanding of how the system is designed and how it works. So I'd like to be able to, just on a factual basis, convey to you how our system works from a legal perspective, and then you can take that knowledge and use it however you wish, form whatever opinions you may like, and then, but at least when you're out in the world talking to folks about immigration, you'll be doing it from a standpoint of, more knowledge than the general population has. So to begin with, immigration law, U.S. immigration law, is 100% federal law. So state law really, whatever they may pass or think or do, doesn't really enter into the equation. It's 100% federal, always has been. It'd be very helpful then to understand who are the players in the federal immigration scheme. And there's quite a few. So the first agency one would encounter would be the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. They handle what's called visa petitions. So in the vast amount of, in all family-based cases, and in most employment-based cases, this is the first agency you would encounter. Either a family member or a company would submit a bunch of paperwork to USCIS, as we refer to it, and they would make sure it's in, conformance with the law and issue a visa petition approval. Then the next company, or agency rather, that one would encounter during this process, sometimes before USCIS, just depends on how the petitions are filed, would be the U.S. Department of Labor. Obviously, that would only apply to the business aspect of immigration, the family or the business-based petitions, but the USDOL is there to make sure that the wages being offered to aliens, which is the statutory term alien, that the aliens are paid the same amount or better than Americans, that they're not being underpaid and thus taken advantage of. The next agency would be the U.S. Department of State, and they govern all the embassies and consulates around the world where a person would go and apply for a visa in order to come to the United States. So once their passport is stamped with that visa, they would then encounter the next federal agency, which is U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. And they would be located either at a pre-clearance station at several international airports around the world, or they would be here at one of our land or sea border checkpoints, and then one would again present their credentials, and they have the ability to determine how long someone is admitted for, whether that's permanently or if they're here as a visitor or a new worker, what the time frame would be for which they're allowed to be in the United States. And then, of course, today everyone knows of ICE, U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and their job is to make sure that the laws are being followed and to remove any alien that has violated those laws. After that would be the U.S. Department of Justice, and they operate what's known as the Executive Office for Immigration Review. And so if you're already in the United States and have a type of case which could be adjudicated by them relative to your removal, they would hear those types of cases. So in your ordinary lives, if you've ever had the pleasure of dealing with a single federal agency, let's say Social Security Administration or the Veterans Administration, heaven forbid the IRS, that's, you know what that experience was like with one federal agency, so imagine what the complexity of dealing with 6, all of which have concurrent jurisdiction over a single subject matter at the same time. It's quite an interesting process. And one thing that's very important to recognize about U.S. immigration law is that everything that's confronting folks today, the vast majority of it, those laws have been on the books since 1952. That was when the Immigration and Naturalization Act was first established. After that, there was some significant changes in 1965. And then the last round of significant statutory changes to U.S. immigration law was in 1996. And I had started practicing, I think, about 95, around there, and that was a big regulatory change. But so we're dealing with laws that are, 30 to 80 years old that have been on the books. U.S. immigration law is divided into various categories. There's non-immigrant visas, which means someone's coming here for a temporary period, which could be anywhere from 6 months for a visitor to years and years and years for certain types of workers. For example, if you arrived on what used to be called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, it's now called the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, you could be here temporarily, say in nursing or one of the various professional occupations. There's no limit on the number of stays you can have. So it's a very wide scope of people's ability to stay here. And then on the other side, there's immigrant visas, and that means you decide to come here permanently. And that could be either through a family connection or your employer has sought to have you here permanently. And then they, of course, have to work through the Department of Labor, generally showing, not in all cases, but in many, that there's no American ready, willing, and able to take the job, and consequently, they ought to be able to give it to someone from outside the country. Then, apart from that, family-based immigration and employment-based immigration. We also have two subsets outside of those that would be asylum law, you hear about that a lot today, and then refugee law. And before I go into some of the aspects of family and employment-based law, just as far as refugees are concerned, they are not just anybody, but primarily the United Nations describes a group of people. Sometimes they're held in camps or something like that, not against their own will, but just for protection, and they get to come into the United States, and the president, according to the statutes, gets to set the number that can enter in any given year, and it always varies. Asylees, they're folks who claim, and could be true, could not be true, but their claim is to enter the United States that they are suffering persecution in their home country, either based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a social group, or political opinion. Now, the thing that's important about this, that the persecution suffered by law has to be at the hands of their own government. And that's a very small subset of people in the world that come here for that, although there's no limit on the number of people that can apply for that in any given year. On family-based immigration, there's two aspects to it. You can have the immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, which would be parents, spouses, or unmarried children under 21, and there's no limit on the number of those that are admitted each year. If, however, you come outside of those categories, which could be, and I did have some slides on that. Let me see. Yes, it looks like it's up right there. I can see it over here. If you see the list there on those family-based preferences, those are the folks that are not immediate relatives, and they're in those separate categories. There are limits on the amount of those folks that can be entered in any given year, and the upper limit is 480,000. But that's the only aspect of U.S. immigration law where there's a floor, a minimum. So you must allow in at least 226,000 of those per year, of those folks, because that is what Congress has said, and it's been on the books for many, many, many decades. So that always happens. Now, but on top of that, you add in the immediate relatives that are not counted, and there's about 552,000 of those folks that are admitted each year to the United States. So in general, on the family-based side of things, you have about 780,000 people per year, every year, that enters the United States as green card holders, as the colloquial term is lawful permanent residency. And then on top of that, on the employment-based side, there's an upper limit of 140,000 admittances each year, and they always get used up. So generally, through those two areas of the law, you have, upwards of over 900,000 people. So just to make it easy, about 1 million people per year, because we didn't count the asylees or the refugees. So every single year, 1 million people come to the United States legally to stay forever, permanently. Not counting, of course, on the flip side, the people that just come for temporary periods. And this is just legal immigration. It doesn't count the number of people that come, let's say, to work, and then their visa expires and they stay, or that sort of thing. So just the solid legal numbers, about 1 million people per year. On the visa bulletin, let me see if we could go to the next slide. Is that the family-based? Oh, I got 5 minutes left. Great. I just wanted to point out on the family-based preferences, you can see that there's one column that says, every country in the world, and then accepted out of that you have China, India, Mexico, and the Philippines. So to give you some amount of feeling for how long these things take, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a particular date, and that would be for the brothers and sisters, all the way across on that bottom line, the brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. And for the Filipinos, it's like 20 years. Wait. Now, you think, oh my gosh, why would someone have to wait 20 years? It's because of those numbers that get used up every year. It creates a backlog, and that's called an immigrant visa backlog. And so Congress feels it's not fair that just one country should eat up all the, say for India, for example, it sends a tremendous amount of folks here, that they would get to eat up all the visas. So on the upper limit of visas, it's divided by countries as well, and I think it's 7%. Each country can send in 7%. But those countries just send more people just because more people apply, for whatever reason, where Western Europe sends very little, so they would be in the other category. So, like I say, it can be anywhere from a couple of years to get here to 20-some years, but it's based on a attempt to be fair to every country in the world. I will be available afterwards for a period of time. If you folks have any questions about specific types of visas or how something works, happy to address those types of questions. Thank you for having me. It's difficult to deal with U.S. immigration law in 20 minutes, so I hope it hasn't been too disjointed, but very happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for having me. It's very kind of you.